So in today's video, we're talking about how divorce changes a man. I am a divorced man. My wife, now ex-wife, asked for a divorce a little over a year ago, and the ink has been dry on our divorce decree for a few months now. And I've gone through a lot of changes, and I still am going through a lot of changes. But there are also some good statistics we can look at. So it's not just my case, but we're looking at cases across the board. So if you're a man going through a divorce, about to go through a divorce, or having just gone through a divorce, you're going to get a lot out of today's video. Hi, I'm Jeff Campbell from DivorcedParentsClub.com, and I'm on a mission to help other divorced people just like me navigate these troubled waters, whether that's learning how to date again, dealing with a toxic ex, helping your kids if you have kids. We cover it all on this channel. But let's keep going right now, talking about how divorce changes a man. So first, let's talk about how long it actually takes for a man to get over a divorce. On average, it takes 18 months. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear unless you've been divorced for a long time, and if you have, you probably aren't watching this video anyway. In my case, my wife, as like I said, asked for a divorce probably about almost 14 months ago. So the good news is for me, if we're going from that date, then I'm almost in the clear here. But if you're just starting out on this journey, 18 months is the average amount of time it takes for a man to get over a divorce. Now, women move on a lot faster than that. In fact, 73% of women who go through a divorce get over it a lot quicker than that, get into a new relationship much faster than the guys do on average, and just move on with their life that much faster. It's due in large part to the fact that most divorces and most breakups are in fact initiated by the woman, and whoever initiates the divorce is naturally going to move on quicker. That doesn't mean it's not without hardship. It doesn't mean they don't ever feel feelings of loss or regret, and that doesn't mean they don't have to mourn the loss of that relationship. But if you're the person in the driver's seat, you're naturally going to move on a lot quicker. And most divorces are initiated by women. I'm going to get into more of that and more of those statistics a little bit later in the video, though. Let's talk now about the stages that a man goes through after a divorce. There are 5 clear stages that you're going to go through, and let's review them now so you can kind of figure out maybe where you're at on this roadmap. So denial is the first one. Just, you're in disbelief. Like I said, most of the time it's the women that ask for a divorce, and many times it comes as a shock. It comes out of the blue. I know that was the case in my case. When my wife asked for a divorce, I had no idea. She said she'd felt that way for 2 years and didn't want to say anything. Not very fair to me, not fair to our kids, but that's what she did, and that's not uncommon. I was in denial at first. Then, of course, anger is the next stage. You're angry about the fact that your spouse wants a divorce, and especially as in many cases, you didn't see it coming. There was no communication, hey, I'm not really happy in our marriage. Can we work on things? Can we go to marriage counseling? There was none of that in my case, and that's not uncommon in a lot of marriages either. So you do go through that anger stage once you've kind of gotten past the disbelief stage. Then comes the bargaining stage, where you're this is where like the neediness, the desperation comes in, where you're trying to desperately like throw anything at them to get them to change their mind, or you're begging them to go to marriage counseling and things like that. And I did go through a little bit of that, but thankfully not a lot of that, because those are what the website Marriage Helper calls push behaviors, where you're literally pushing the person further away. So if you're thinking about doing that, and anger is the same way, you don't want to do things that are going to push them further away if you're trying to win them back. If you don't care, then sure, go for it. But if you want to win them back, the way to do that is not to display unattractive behaviors like being needy and desperate and begging and pleading or getting angry and name calling and belittling and trying to if they could just see how much I hurt, maybe they would change their mind. In most cases, that does not work. The next phase is depression. You realize everything that you've lost, and you realize how your life is going to be changing, often for the worse, and you just kind of naturally get in a funk about it. Luckily, I didn't really go through that stage for very long either. I quickly made some changes in my life and my health and my activities, and started focusing on like positive behaviors to really kind of help me navigate these troubled waters. I'm going to get into that a little bit further in the video too, because there are some definite things that you can do that will speed up the recovery process. And then the last phase that men go through, and really women go through these too, in a divorce is acceptance. They have come to accept that this is their reality, this is where I'm at, and what do I need to do to move forward? And luckily, I got to that phase probably about 7 or 8 months after my ex originally asked for the divorce. Wasn't there immediately, and it's not a perfect science. It's not like once you reach that finish line, that destination, you never have any of those other feelings. You do definitely have some of those feelings overlapping and kind of going in and out, but really by and large I reached that acceptance phase somewhere around January, or towards the end of January of 2022, which was, probably 8 or 9 months after she asked for the divorce. The reality though is that a lot of guys, we tend to be the strong silent type. A lot of guys skip or delay going through these stages. They don't really want to face their emotions, and so they suppress these things. The downside of that, as you can imagine, is that it just delays going through these stages and getting over it. It doesn't make it go away when you suppress things. That's true of any emotion, and that's true of both men and women. It's really, really good to let our feelings out and to talk about them with somebody, and whether that's family members, friends, therapist, whatever, it's really good to get these emotions out of our system, process what we're feeling, and move on, as opposed to burying it deep down, hoping it goes away. It won't go away. But there are some other factors that will affect how long it takes. I mentioned at the start of the video, it takes on average up to 18 months, but there are some factors that can make that shorter or longer. So let's review those now. First, of course, is how long you were married for. I was married for almost 15 years at the time when she asked for the divorce. That's a fairly long amount of time. And so I do think that affects how long it took me to get over it, and even her, although she moved on really quickly. The next factor that affects how long it takes is whether or not you saw it coming, whether it was a surprise or not. In my case, it was a surprise. So I do think that also adds to the amount of time it's going to take to get over it. If you have gone to marriage counseling and you've struggled for years and you kind of both hate each other, and then finally just somebody asks for a divorce, but it's totally not a surprise, you're kind of checked out already anyway, so that naturally will make it go faster. Then, of course, who asked for the divorce? I mentioned this earlier in the video. Most of the time it's women who ask for the divorce, so that's why they get over divorce a lot faster. Doesn't mean they're not grieving the loss of the relationship and having their own uncomfortable emotions and things like that, but if you're in the driver's seat, you're definitely going to get over things faster than if you're in the passenger seat. Infidelity is another one, of course, that affects how quickly you can get over a divorce. Now, I will say that even though women initiate divorce 80% of the time compared to men, it is men who cheat twice as often as women. I know those are complicated statistics, but most of the time it is men who cheat. But that doesn't necessarily mean the man wants to divorce his wife. And I know that's complicated, and we're not really going to get into infidelity in this video, but that's just how it is. Guys tend to cheat twice as often as women, but they don't want to actually divorce their wife because of the affair to be with the other woman. If kids are involved, that naturally makes things a lot more complicated and can make it take a lot longer to get over, because you're seeing the pain and the discomfort and the disruption to your kids' lives, and that hurts as a parent. I have 3 kids with my ex, and it hurts to see the impact on them that her actions and our divorce are ultimately causing them. And then the last one that affects how quickly you can get over it is financial instability. And, both men and women do suffer financially after a divorce, because often, even if the wife is working outside the home, income for both people is still going to go down. And it affects the lifestyle, it affects your spending habits and things like that, it affects vacations. Your kids may have come to expect a certain level of lifestyle, and now neither one of you are able to offer that in many, many cases. And so that does affect your happiness and how long it takes you to get past things and how long it takes you to kind of rebuild what you've lost financially. Real quick before we keep going though, if you like this video and you want to see more videos like it, smash that like button and the subscribe button and the bell notification button too. That way you get notified of future videos I put out just like this one. It not only helps my channel grow, it also helps YouTube know what kind of videos to show you. But let's keep going right now. So why are men affected by divorce so much more than women? As I mentioned, 80% of divorces are initiated by the woman. That's just how it is. Even if the man cheated and the woman is filing for divorce because of that, it's still 80% of the time it's going to be the woman filing for divorce. And a lot of the time it comes out of the blue and as a shock to the man. So that naturally is going to impact the guy a lot more than the girl. But men face financial hardship more than women. I know I talked about that a little earlier in the video, and in truth, both parties get impacted. But the reality of it is it affects men a lot more than it does women. I know in my case, I'm giving my ex a lot of money every month, about a third of what I make. I'm giving her. She's not working. She's just a full-time college student trying to finish her degree. And so, she hasn't really had to adjust her lifestyle that much. I've had to adjust mine significantly because of how much money I'm giving her. And I'm giving her child support, even though we're 50-50 custody and I pay all of their expenses. That was basically just me being generous and trying to maintain an amicable relationship with her. I did reach that agreement with her. But also, I started my blogging and YouTube business while we were married. So just like the couch in the corner, that is considered community property, and she's entitled to up to half of the value of my business, even though she had nothing to do with creating it. So I'm giving her a lot of money for that as well. And so I am suffering financially. I can't afford to do anywhere near the amount of things that I used to be able to do. And like I said, she hasn't really had to cut back her lifestyle that much. And so that naturally makes it harder for me to kind of like move forward. And I'm working hard right now to rebuild the income that I've lost and to boost my income. And I know I'll get there. And I'll eventually get to a place where I'm making a lot more money than I ever did. And, I will be just fine. But for right now, I am feeling that pinch. Another reason that men sometimes take a lot longer to get over a divorce than the woman is that it's not uncommon for the man to still be in love with his wife and to want her back. That's not true in my case. In fact, the more time goes by and the more interactions that she and I have, the more I'm thankful that we're not still married, and if I'm being honest. We have a decent, co-parenting friendship, if you want to call it that. But my feelings of love for her are gone. And I now question why I even stayed as long as I did based on some of the interactions we've had. But many men do in fact still love their ex-wife and want desperately to get her back and aren't sure how to do that. Now, the good news is that does actually happen some of the time. It is possible to get your wife back even after the ink is dry on a divorce decree. In fact, if I remember the statistics correctly, that happens about 14% of the time. So it is totally possible. It is important though, if that's your goal, to not engage in those push behaviors I mentioned earlier. So how often do guys actually regret divorce? Well, 39% of the time, the man regrets the divorce, whether or not they initiated it. Almost 40% of the time. Compare that to women who only regret the divorce 27% of the time. So almost a quarter to almost a half difference between men and women and how often they regret the divorce after it's gone through. So now I don't want to focus on the negative. I don't want to focus on the problems. Let's talk about the solutions. How do you, as a man going through or having recently gone through a divorce, how do you become a better man faster? That's what we're going to talk about right now. So first, if you haven't already, you need to stop living with your ex or your soon-to-be ex. You need to figure out that life arrangement where you're not staying under the same roof. My ex and I stayed under the same roof for probably 7 or 8 months until shortly before the ink was dry on the divorce decree. The divorce had already been filed. We were just waiting for the judge to sign off on it. You also need to give up hope on any sort of reconciliation. Now, of course, if you desperately want to reconcile and you're seeing signs that it's possible, then you probably don't want to actually get to this phase. You actually probably do want to focus on that. Maybe suggest marriage coaching or marriage counseling, things like that. Don't engage in those push behaviors. Make sure that they feel free. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, you must love in such a way that the other person feels free. So I know many times it's not uncommon for a woman, especially if they're a woman with an avoidant attachment style, they see any form of checking in or, setting boundaries or talking about, goals and expectations, and they see anything like that as a form of control. That's not really fair, but that is how they see it. So you want to make sure you've removed all of that, all of those barriers that they might see as controlling behavior. You're just allowing them to be free. If you've also been separated for a long time, it's also important to not push them or make them feel pressured into reconciling. You don't even want to pressure them into labeling what it is that you're doing. You just kind of want to let them come to you at their pace and let them be in the driver's seat of whether or not you're labeling yourselves as quote unquote reconciling, or even if you're labeling yourself as husband and wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, let them be in the driver's seat of that so that they're not feeling pressured by you to rush things beyond the pace at which they want to go. Next, come up with a consistent schedule if you have kids. Custody schedules, who's dropping off when, who's responsible for what. The more of that you have spelled out black and white, ideally in your divorce decree, the fewer problems that are going to come up and the fewer communication battles that are going to come up out of that misunderstanding and lack of clarity. Next, I want you to avoid using alcohol or drugs as any sort of a coping mechanism. It's easy to reach for that drink when you're feeling stressed or sad or mad or whatever. But I've come over the course of the last year and a half, basically, I've come to the point where if I'm feeling anything other than happy, I actually don't drink. And that wasn't always the case in the past, but that's what I do now. I like to have a drink when I'm in a great mood, and I don't drink to excess. But if I'm in a great mood, I'll have a beer, I'll have a cocktail if I'm feeling good, because I find that it enhances whatever mood I'm already in. It's never made me do something that I wouldn't have done otherwise, but it does enhance whatever mood I'm in. So if I'm agitated, anxious, angry, sad, it's going to amplify those feelings, and you don't want that. That's not going to speed up your recovery. So avoid doing anything like that as a means of coping with difficult feelings. Then I want you to reconnect with friends and family. What do I mean by that? Well, when you're in a long-term committed relationship or a marriage, it's not uncommon for us to kind of put our family and our friends by the wayside, not see them and talk to them as much as we used to, not go out and do things with the guys or the girls, that kind of thing. The irony is that over time, we stop doing the things that caused our spouse to fall in love with us, whether those are hobbies, whether that was being in good shape because you went to the gym 3 times a week, or you went out with your buddies and shot pool a couple nights a week, or whatever it is. Who you were then is what caused your spouse to fall in love with you. But over the course of a long-term relationship, we tend to let a lot of those things go. And then we cease being the person that they fell in love with, and they wonder why they're not as attracted to us anymore as they used to be. So I want you to reconnect with family and friends. I want you to get back to doing things and hobbies that bring you joy, the things that you used to love doing that you don't do as often anymore. If you've stopped going to the gym or you don't go as often as you used to, I want you to get back in the gym and start going there a lot more frequently and get your body back in its shape. And these things, could work to attract your ex back, but they're also going to set you up for mental happiness, and they're going to set you up for success with the next person that you meet. You're going to be that much stronger and more grounded and in a better place emotionally and physically. And those are all good things for you. Next, I want you to consider seeing a therapist. I saw a therapist for much of the past, say, 12 months or maybe 10 months. And I recently stopped, more for financial reasons than anything else, because I love my therapist, but I was going there regularly, and it really helped to kind of have a sounding board and a safe place to talk and vent and just kind of get things off my chest and say things and then have it repeated back to me so I could really hear what I was saying and was that really what I meant. And there's no shame in seeking help. And I know as guys, a lot of time we are, as I mentioned earlier, we're taught to be the strong, silent type. And, a man doesn't talk about his feelings, and that's all bullshit. See a therapist. It will help you go through this process faster. Along those same lines, don't avoid those uncomfortable feelings, those feelings of anger, resentment, sadness, loss, whatever it is that you're feeling. Don't suppress it. I talked about that earlier in the video, so I'm not going to go into great length again, but don't suppress those negative feelings. And then lastly, and this is going to be tough, but don't date too soon. Like I said, my ex asked for a divorce at the end of April 2021. I didn't begin dating really until probably somewhere around March of 2022, so almost a year later. And I intentionally did that because I didn't want to have a rebound. I knew I wasn't going to be in a good place for someone else, and I thought that was unfair to them, but I also felt like it was unfair to me. I intentionally wanted to wait to get to a place where I didn't still feel that sense of pain and loss, and I wasn't still secretly hoping that my ex would come back to me. I wanted to get past all of that before I started dating anyone. And so I think that's crucial in moving forward in the right way. It's going to set you up for much greater success when you do begin to date. And then I don't want you to be in a hurry to lock down the first person that comes along. That used to be my tendency in the relationships I had prior to my now ex-wife. I tended to go right from one relationship to the next, and that was really out of feelings of codependency and, a fear of abandonment that was rooted in my childhood. And so I've intentionally dated several women. I've intentionally tried to take things slowly. I have another friend, thank you, Jen, who has insisted that I check in with her if I am tempted to buy an engagement ring for any of the women that I was dating. And I say that somewhat jokingly, but there's a trail of women out there with engagement rings that I've purchased, so you know who you are. I'm intentionally avoiding rushing things and trying to take things slow and just have fun, just dating one woman now, but who knows? I'm not trying to put pressure on her or put pressure on that relationship, if you will, just trying to see where things go, take it slow, and enjoy the ride. That's what you should do too. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.